Let me know if this sounds familiar. Several years ago, during a parent-teacher session, it was one of the last appointment slots in the evening, and this mom came in with her student in tow. This was 7th grade, and a younger sibling. And she, maybe in tow is probably pretty accurate, more like she was dragging them in. I mean, she was on a mission. She marched into my classroom. So much so that I was running a little over with the people before, and she just walked in to the classroom where other people were there, and the mom sat down and she immediately started attacking me and my teaching. And I was so taken aback in response to her anger in me that I got flushed and frustrated, and I knew I wasn't supposed to respond in anger, but then I got defensive, and let's just say I wish I would have handled the situation differently. And it's one of those times where if you could get do-overs at points in your life, this would be one of them. My name is Matt Weld. I am the host of the Teacher's Classroom podcast. And in this episode, I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about anger, what it is, how it manifests itself, how we receive it, and how we can deal most effectively with other people's anger. When we talk about anger, we are talking about an emotion that is one of the most common emotions in the human experience. And the more you delve into anger, the more you see that it's all about you as a person. So when you Google anger, or when you're reading literature on anger, a lot of it is how you can control your own anger outbursts, how you can lessen the stressors in your life that cause anger. But as educators, I feel that we are so often the recipient of other people's anger that we need to reframe the question when it comes to our experience and talk about how we can better deal and respond to other people's anger. All right. But to take us on that journey, I'd like to first talk about what anger is. And I think that we first need to take a little journey on what actually is an emotion. All right. So without going into the history of cognitive science and emotional science, which I am just now learning about myself, the most recent evidence overwhelmingly points to the fact that emotions are not built in to you. They are built. They are constructed by our own version of reality. If you watch the TED Talk of Lisa Feldman Barrett on anger and emotions, she does a fantastic job of explaining this. So I urge you to look it up. I will put the link to it in the show notes. But what she's essentially saying is that from the time we are born, our brain is constantly making predictions. Our brain is not the reactive brain that we have been taught that it is. It's not like our brain when we are playing baseball, for example. It's not like we see the ball and then our brain says, oh, there's a ball. Now I better lift the arm up so that I can catch the ball. Instead, our brain is constantly making little predictions on what we think might happen. So as the ball is thrown, our capillaries expand, our heart rate increases, we start breathing more deeply so that our body is ready for what might happen. And the same is true when it comes to reading. And the same is true when it comes to the spoken language. We are able to read because we learn what's going to come next. That's why you can take words and you can take out most of the letters and we still can recognize the word for what it was supposed to be. I can start a sentence and you would be able to finish my sentence without me actually saying the last word, right? So you filled that sentence in. And so the same is true with emotions. And so what emotions are basically our body's way of contextualizing the physical feelings within our body. And when those physical feelings don't match what we're expecting, that's an emotion. Okay. So if we can, it helps me at least to understand that an emotion, and in this context, anger, is something that is constructed by our own lens. Right? As a kid, it's not that we are built to be angry people. We have experiences throughout our lifetime, and those experiences construct a lens through which we view the world. It constructs a lens through which our brain makes those predictions as to what's going to happen. And so if we follow Brené Brown's way of thinking, anger is a secondary emotion. It's not the primary emotion. So it's not the emotion that we instantly feel. If you're angry, it's more likely to be frustration, fear, pain, hurt, and then you don't know how to deal with that. Robert Jackson, in his book, Becoming the Educator They Need, talks about how a person who shows anger is a person who has lost control of the situation and is taking someone's words or actions personally. Okay, so they feel they've lost control of the situation. They are unbalanced. They're frustrated at the situation, and so they exert or express their feelings in the symptoms and the characteristics that we perceive as anger: yelling, flushed faces, maybe physical gestures that are sharp and pointed, maybe punching the desk or something like that. He goes on to say that the root causes of anger are fear, frustration, pain, and hurt. And the philosopher Eckhart Tolle, he's a modern philosopher, he says that an emotion is the body's response to a thought. And I think it's a little more physical than that an emotion is a body's response to an imbalance in the body's physiological response systems, an imbalance into our body's prediction of what is supposed to happen. And then the way our brain identifies and categorizes that, because that's all part of the predicting thing. We're always trying to identify something. And if it doesn't fit into a preconceived or a pre-experienced definition, then we are unable to identify it. And that causes imbalance, and that causes an emotion. And in a lot of people, it's expressed as anger, because anger is that wide range of emotion, of physical response that we see from people. Just like I said, it's the outbursts, the raised voices, the talking faster, the larger hand gestures. And so anger is just a way of humans to express those inner emotions that they probably haven't been able to identify yet. I like to call anger the when we don't know what else to do emotion. When we're lost and we haven't even recognized that we're actually feeling frustration, we express it in anger. When we can't really identify or haven't looked deeply enough into ourselves to say, hey, I am feeling hurt. Someone else hurt my feelings, said something to me that affected me at a personal level. I express it as anger. Okay. Because I don't know what else to do, or I don't have the emotional agency to be able to know how to respond in an effective way. And so when we receive anger from other people, a couple books that I've read recently have helped me to contextualize this, one of which is Difficult Conversations by Douglas Stone, Bruce Patton, and Sheila Heen. And then another one is Living the Sutras, which is an ancient Hindu text. If you practice yoga at all, the yoga is that we think of is 1/8 of the total yoga experience. So the physical part is only 1/8 of it. The rest of it is all mental. It's meditations. It's the sutras and that kind of thing. And one of the sutras is that greed, anger, and confusion in thought, word, or deed create violence. Okay. Breaking the cycle of pain requires discernment and focus of the opposite qualities. And so kind of like what I was saying before about how that discernment, if we're going to break the cycle, simply identifying that we're angry is the first step to doing that. Okay. Something else that happens when people are angry, when people express anger to us, is that the authors of the Difficult Conversations book talk about the all or nothing syndrome. And so, like in the situation I told at the very beginning when the mom came in and she was angry, I went from I am a good teacher to all of a sudden I am the worst teacher on the planet. Okay. I went from confidence that I am good at my job to I have no idea what I'm doing. And it's this all or nothing type of thing. When people attack us in anger, we go from all to nothing. We go from 10 to 0, when really there's a whole gamut in between. And if we understand that this variance is there, so that when someone does attack us personally, we can stop that meter from dipping all the way from full to empty to maybe full to, did I do something wrong? No, I'm still me. What they say does not affect who I am. And that all goes into the not taking it personally as well. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But if we are able to not take it personally, if we are able to keep it more at the 10 and sort of remove ourselves from the situation, that makes it a lot easier to accept that other people are angry, and that is not, while they may seem like they are attacking us, we cannot let that happen. Because remember, emotions are constructed by us, and the way we respond to emotions today affects how our brains will predict and create our emotions in the future. And so if we can respond to anger, not in a personal way, but in a more detached way, and say, oh, this person is angry. They must be feeling frustrated, hurt. They are fearful of something, or perhaps they're feeling some kind of pain, whether physical or emotional pain. And so if we can respond to anger by not taking it personally, if we can then use quiet time to ourselves later on when we can cultivate the opposite reactions. So if I then, at that time, those years ago with that parent-teacher conference, if I had then sat and reflected on that incident, and instead of being angry at that woman and going into the break room and telling the story, which only just made it worse, right? If I just sat and reflected, this is what happened with no judgment on my part, right? This is what happened. That no judgment keeps my meter at 10. So it's always at all, not all or nothing. If I allow self-compassion, yes, this happened. It was unfortunate, but it just happened. It was a thing, and it's in the past. If we can't dwell on what's already happened because we can't do anything about it. Okay. The only thing is what's happening right now. And so when people are angry and actually yelling at you, stay in the moment, listen, because jumping ahead into the future doesn't do any good, because that hasn't happened yet either. And you really have no control. So if you try to think of responses to what you feel you need to say based on your inner construction of yourself and your values and your emotions. And so you're not really listening. You're not in the moment. You're in the future and you're in the past. And those are the two realms that either haven't happened yet or already happened. But regardless, you have absolutely no control over it. So stay in the moment, listen attentively, realize that it's not about you. Okay. If you take it personally, you've allowed yourself to take it personally. And I know, goodness knows, I know that is a tall order and really hard to do. And we all struggle with that. And some people are better at it than others. And some people may say, yeah, but if you don't learn a lesson, then you have no empathy. Well, I wouldn't say that's true. Having empathy is understanding another person's situation. And in this case, when you're responding to anger, you're responding to them. You are understanding that they are in a point in their moment when they don't know what else to do. And so that don't know what else to do emotion is taking over. And there's probably another emotion, another root cause to their anger. And if we can ask questions and stay calm ourselves, because anger plus anger is not really an additive effect. It's like an exponential effect. You know, if you go from 0 to 10 in response to their 0 to 10, it's not really just 20. It's like 100 or more. And that never works. And so if you can, I know it's hard, take a deep breath, respond calmly, even if you have to say, let's take a break. I'd like to schedule a follow-up interview. I'd like to take a break and have someone else involved in this conversation. I'd like to take a break and get some more information and come back to this situation. You know, what is the real third conversation? Okay. There's my story, their story, and probably the real story. Like I used to tell my parents that would come in too. I always told them, okay, I will believe half. I want you to believe half of what you hear about what goes on in my classroom. Okay. You believe half of what you hear, and I'll believe half of what goes on at home. And they always got that look in their eye like, oh shit, what did my kid just say about what goes on in the house? I said, let's just agree that there's probably a middle story. Okay. And oftentimes that brought a laugh and set the path back on course. And so in summary, I just want to say that responding to other people's anger is a lifelong journey. There are people who are better at responding to anger than other people. For example, my wife knows exactly what to say in tense situations, and I wish I did. I oftentimes will get someone who is angry with me, and all of a sudden I'm at a loss for words. After I'm able to reflect, I think, oh, this is what I should have said. But at the time, I'm usually at a loss for words, and then I stumble and fumble, and then I get embarrassed because I didn't respond in what I thought was the appropriate amount of time, and then it's just a downward spiral from there. So we're all on a journey of responding to angry people, but not taking it personally, and understanding that it's okay to take a break, understanding that it's not an all or one situation when they come and attack you personally. I think maybe if we can start to take those lessons to heart, that we can have more effective parent-teacher conversations, parent-teacher conferences in the future. Thank you for listening to the Teacher's Classroom podcast. You can find this episode and its show notes, plus all the past episodes and their show notes on the podcast home, teachillinois.com/podcast. If you would be so kind as to go to iTunes or Google or wherever you get your podcasts and leave a review and follow us, that would be much appreciated. We are always looking to gain more exposure and spread all this great information to teachers all over the world, not just here in Illinois. So with that being said, I'd also like to thank you, the listeners, as well as the regional superintendents in Illinois' Area 5 who support this initiative. And as always, I look forward to reading your comments, and I'll see you next time.